Please welcome Derec Shuler, CEO of Ascent Classical Academies.
Well, good evening. I appreciate Dr. Sweeting pretty much setting up for me to talk about education, and everything he was talking about is what we do. So I'm glad to be here this evening to talk about education and freedom. I'm the founder of Golden View Classical Academy in Golden, Colorado, and also a network of classical K-12 charter schools known as Ascent Classical Academies. We have at Ascent Classical Academy our first replication school opening up in Douglas County this coming fall. We're working on one in eastern Boulder County right now as well, and a couple others we're planning to open throughout Colorado. The interesting thing about our schools is that all of our schools have partnered with the Hillsdale College Barney Charter School Initiative. And you can find out more information about what we're doing at ascentclassical.org. I'd like to make a couple just brief comments on what is a charter school. So first of all, charter schools are tuition-free public schools. Oh, excuse me. So we have curricular autonomy, so we get to select our curriculum, and we have independent governance as well. We are not selective. Our kids are admitted on the basis of lottery, and we serve all kids, including those with special needs. We operate with taxpayer funding, operating dollars, but we also pay for our own facilities out of that as well, something that government-run schools don't do. So a question, why do we educate our children? Is education something that we recognize as being good for its own sake, to prepare children to be happy and flourish in life? Or is it this uninspiring idea of merely preparing them for college and career? Well, those are important considerations. Have we reduced the attainment of knowledge and development of character and virtue to getting a job? Where does the passion of contemplation on what it means to live a good life fit in the modern day idea of success in education? So I'd like to step back and look at the ideas and the notion of education back in the era of the founding of our country. The American founding fathers were in strong support of education and recognized the need to educate the masses, yet they didn't include it as a responsibility of the federal government. Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Northwest Ordinance, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. He also wrote that education was needed to enable every man to judge for himself what will secure or endanger his freedom. Many of the founders believed in educating the people, and it goes along with Franklin's famous warning to Miss Powell after the Constitutional Convention when he quipped, "A republic, if you can keep it." Today, we're in an era where the ideas of America being a constitutional republic meant to protect individual and natural rights is being lost. We are entering an era of democracy where the majority rules, which the founders warned was a milestone on the road to tyranny. Today, education is a massive system, both primarily funded and provided by the government. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, for starters, adjusted for inflation, spending on education has tripled since the 1970s, and student achievement has remained flat that entire time. School administration is growing at rates far surpassing student enrollment and the growth of teachers. The Colorado State Pension System, or PARA, now takes over 20% of school payroll as the employer contribution, along with 8% from teachers. I had a chance to talk to my friend Heidi Ganal, a CU regent who was up here earlier today, about the impact of this on higher education. So if kids starting college today, 36% of them require remedial classes at the college level. Our 6-year graduation rate today is 53%, and 75% of Americans can't name the 3 branches of the federal government. Shockingly, I know that was bad, but shockingly, 40% of adults nowadays prefer socialism to capitalism, and that number is only growing. While capitalism has created more wealth across the broadest segment of society in the history of mankind, socialism has resulted in the deaths of 100 million people in order to be properly implemented. But are we teaching this in schools today? Our schools and colleges, in order to be tolerant and open, have become intolerant. The pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful is being turned upside down. Some schools teach that truth doesn't exist today, but is based on one's own personal experience and worldview. This lack of moral grounding has set our young people adrift. We've destroyed heroes like the founders of our nation, removed statues from parks, and rewritten textbooks. Since progressive education started taking over in the 1930s, and you can read about this in the book To Kill a Mockingbird in the first couple chapters, we've created generations of young people less prepared to live in and maintain a free society, now willing to trade liberty for security. So why does this matter to us? Well, obviously, the cost and the return of taxpayers is important. We spend a lot of money in public education. But I think the greatest concern to us is this change in attitude and thinking among Americans, and it's a current and future threat to our nation and the ideals of freedom and self-government. Now, we as parents, we can opt out of public education and choose to send our kids to private schools or home schools, as many families have done. But as a charter school founder, that was my backup option. In our schools, which my children attend, students receive an American classical education, described pretty much by what Dr. Sweeting was just talking about. With a firm foundation in the history and philosophy of the West, they read the great books, develop a keen understanding of how America came to be, and the importance of the free market in living as a free person. It's a fantastic program, and our kids will have a great foundation and background when they graduate. But then what? Who will they be living with as neighbors and colleagues? Well, they're living among or outnumbered by others who have never been exposed to these ideas or history. This question is what has led us to work to establish more classical charter schools available to the public. But also, why what's happening in public education should concern us all, and we need to be vigilant if we want to expand or even protect the ideas we embrace at events like this to remain in the mainstream conversation in our society. Across Colorado, special interests like teachers' unions have been turning and solidifying their influence with local school boards on campaigns to restrict and stifle school choice, to include charter schools, private schools, and home schools. In Jefferson and Douglas counties, for example, unions have concealed and spent enormous amounts of money in elections and recalls, only to be revealed after elections have taken place, and in some cases under court order. They've been able to do this in large part because local school board elections take place in off years. This leads to a very low turnout, and it's easy to target the small segment of the community that actually shows up and votes in these elections. As we've seen with our own charter schools and other schools across the country, school boards aren't always about supporting and providing the best options families want and demand. Frequently, their interests are to protect their government-run schools and controlling what options we as parents have that are acceptable to them. This is important to note in Colorado, since school boards typically have exclusive say over what kind of charter school options your family has access to. So the stakes are high. And what can we do? 3 things. Pay attention to your local school board races, ballot issues, and vote. We need to wake up to what's going on in our school districts and public education. Many school districts are running tax increases this year, and we need to be asking good questions. While I support teachers being paid what they're worth, we should ask why administration is growing faster than student enrollment. While all school board candidates say they support school choice, they won't say that they want to be the ones to define and limit your choices. Number 2, we need to support the expansion of high-quality charter options by helping end exclusive chartering authority in Colorado. This is what gives local school boards exclusive rights to approve or limit charter schools and other publicly funded options. It's a clear conflict of interest to expect local school boards that operate their own schools to be fair partners with charter schools they see as competition. We sometimes hear claims about respecting local control, and I will say that local control is parent control, and parents having the right and responsibility to determine the upbringing of their children. This will allow more options like Ascent Classical Academies and Goldview Classical Academy to offer a rigorous American classical education and focus on the development of good character and virtue to expand throughout Colorado. And third and finally, support the overhaul of PARA, the state retirement system. Most of the increased funding that's going into education today is going straight into this bankrupt program and not into teacher benefits. Less than 10% of all teachers who ever pay into the current state retirement plan never retire with full, or less than 10% actually ever retire with full benefits. So the majority of charter school teachers never invest in the system, and it's not a benefit that brings people into the profession. Para reform helps us put more money into classrooms with existing funding. So education and freedom are closely linked, and it's up to you and us all to make a difference. We need to focus and work together on what should be our common goal: to prepare our young people to preserve the republic we know as America, if we can keep it. So thank you.